Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to be going over the new S-Class Axel. Now this character is an alert character, which I guess we kind of expected to happen, but at the same time, having the tough meta for so long, it's a little bit awkward and weird to see a really powerful alert toon. So Axel has a leadership skill. All alert and fast teammates get 40% attack, a huge bonus to AP when attacking, and 100% stun resistance for the first 2 turns at the beginning of each wave. AKA, this Axel is an anti-Mercer leader. And to be honest, it's kind of weird to see him come out at this time when the Mercer defensive meta was about 2 metas ago. At this time, the only players who really run a Mercer defensive lead are the players using a turn 1 defense team, and they often have something else they can swap in. Or it's just free-to-play players who have only just earned their Mercer recently because his cards have become more widely available. Now, this is kind of unfortunate in my eyes because it's like the spenders have no issue fighting Mercer teams, and the free-to-play players just got Mercer recently, but now there's an anti-Mercer killer that basically extinguishes Mercer from the very beginning. In my eyes, if you pull this toon and you get this toon, you will have 0 issues against Mercer leads on defensive teams. Having that 100% stun resistance at the start is huge. We already saw Michonne, who can give confuse resist to 3 toons including herself, but now we see it on a leadership skill being a stun resist. So Axel's rush is 76 AP, he deals 700% damage up to 3 enemies, and then he, as well as 2 other teammates, get elusive, which means they won't give away any AP when they attack or when they take damage, and they gain 100% attack for 2 turns. This is a huge boost to really any toon, because you're basically doubling their attack. Now, you can't direct who gets this attack boost, but if you have 3 damage dealers on your team, you know one of them is going to get that attack boost. And it's a huge attack boost to have. This makes Axel a killer. Now, Axel's active skill, recover, impair, and AP gain. It's a turn 2 active skill. All teammates recover from impair, and up to 2 teammates get 100% AP. And because we know how unnatural AP gain works, we're able to anticipate as well as manipulate who gets that AP. So in some ways, you don't even need a command toon on your attack team, because if you're able to give 2 toons 100% AP, and it's more likely to be, 30%, 40%, and so on, because on the first turn, whoever you attack with will gain AP based on a huge bonus to AP when attacking as a leadership skill, as well as any AP on their weapons, 8% and 20% weapons. The list kind of goes on and on there. Honestly, with this type of active skill, you could end up rushing Axel on the second turn after using this active skill. You could command rush him that way, so you would need a command toon, but there's just so many possibilities with this character. I think he could be an offensive character or a defensive character. So the mod set that I currently have on him: attack up when taunted, an attack mod, an HP mod, attack versus tough, as well as a confuse resist. You guys would have noticed that in my inventory I did have a couple Paragon mods, and those are the lifesteal Paragon mods, which will be in a separate video later on. Now, I'm not saying that this mod setup is like the ideal mod setup. It's something that I kind of just put together for the sake of this video. What I have done with Axel's weapon, I've changed the HP to attack, added a huge bonus to AP when attacking, and then for the 4th slot, I've given him Team Player 4 for plus 15% attack and plus 35 crit chance to all toons that are adjacent, because he's a leader toon, and I would run him as a leader toon against Mercer teams, for example. What's nice about this Team Player 4 weapon is that it impacts the team like a leadership skill, and it also impacts the toon that holds it. So in this case, Axel also gets this bonus. And when we take a look at the 6-star version of Axel, his leadership skill is almost exactly the same, except all teammates get a 50% stun resistance for the first 2 turns. Sorry, all alert and fast teammates in particular. So 50% stun resistance. Now, this is a little confusing and, in my opinion, a little convoluted because this does not work the same way as either Clementine's leadership skill, which is the minus 25% defense down to the enemies, which works as a multiplicative effect where her defense down can be cumulative with a defense down in the match, which is unique to Clementine. But it also doesn't work like Trader's Resilient, where it's additive. So it's neither multiplicative or additive. And I'm going to showcase this a little later on in the video because I personally don't like it. It's a little confusing how it works, and it's just unlike anything else in the game, so it's almost like it's breaking all the rules. So when we take a look, Active's rush is identical to what it was as a S-class. Now, his active skill is a little bit different, where up to 2 teammates get 50% AP instead of 100%. 50% still is pretty significant and can definitely help some toons rush on that second turn if you so desire. So we're first going to take a look at Axel as a 6-star toon on this particular team. I'm running Dr. Stevens, and he has a stun resist mod of 62.5%. And what we're going to notice when we take him into a fight is that if Dr. Stevens or another toon's mod, stun resist, works but the leadership skill doesn't, they lose that 50% bonus at the top that's listed on all the other toons. Now, this is a little confusing to me because this 62.5% stun resist mod is taking precedence over the 50% stun resist as the leadership skill. So if you're going to run a team with 6-star Axel, you either don't want to put a stun resist mod on your other toons and just rely upon the 50% resist for the first 2 turns, or if you do apply a stun resist mod, make sure that it's greater than the 50% so that it takes precedence. And it's just kind of convoluted still because with Clementine, it's a multiplicative factor, and with Trader and Resilient, it's additive. I would just like to see some consistency because it's hard to keep straight what every single toon does. And now we're just going to show some attack teams. So in this case, we're showing a turn 1 attack team. This type of attack team does not work if there's a payback toon on defense, but it's a pretty straightforward team. Dr. Stevens is there for a 60% AP gain. Arav has 20% AP to self. I attacked with Axel first to make sure that he had AP, and then I command rushed him. I could have rushed Axel before Arav and then given that hopefully the 100% attack boost to Arav, but there's no guarantee of that, which is why I ended up rushing Arav first, because I had a pretty good idea of who I would be able to take down with his rush naturally. This defensive team is pretty tanky for being a Mercer defensive team. Now, we will need to test against other teams, of course, because there are other characters that can be run behind Mercer. We won't be testing Shiva just because we already know that payback will be triggered and it'll cause implosion, but we're just going to see the effectiveness of this type of team against something that, you might see on a defensive team. And it's just proving how effective Axel is with not having to mod against stun with these toons. So Arav, Maggie, Axel, Dr. Stevens, and Nick, you don't even need to worry about being stunned for the first 2 turns. And right now, the match is ending after the first turn. Now, we're actually going to try out Axel on a defensive team if he was a defensive leader. We're going to put double Tanya, Trader, as well as Shane behind Axel. Just because if the enemy's team, so this defensive team, can't be stunned on the first 2 turns, how effective can we be at taking this down quickly? We don't have any HP or defensive lead skills because Axel's attack, and we have a fairly tanky defensive team. This is a very expensive defensive team, but I think it could be pretty effective because anyone who tries to take down this team will have to be fairly lucky. They won't be able to stun the enemy for 2 turns. If Shane uses his active skill on the first turn, then everyone is focused, meaning taunt and confuse won't control the enemy. Shane also bodyguards, so he will take damage for another character if they're going to take more than 30% of their max HP as damage. Tanya, of course, outlast toon with reviving skills. So both of them are going to be very difficult to take down. With Outlast, they gain 100% AP when they're destroyed, or when they're killed, sorry. So that can be very dangerous, especially if the only way to control them is really by impairing them if they're focused, because taunt and confuse, as I mentioned, they can't be stunned. So you could end up getting yourself into a revive loop, I think. So this team could be very, very tricky. Now, I haven't completely modded the defensive team. With reflect damage mods and stuff, I tried to tank it out instead, just to see how a Mercer team would do against Axel first. Now, this is definitely not what I would use usually, because if you know that Axel is the leader, you know that your Mercer will not have any effect against any of the defensive toons. So this was just showing kind of an attack team that I have used in the past, but I won't use it against an Axel lead. It's just to showcase how effective Axel could be on a defensive team if you go into the match without having an offensive leader, or if you're not using a heal reduction and infection combination. So now we're going to switch things up a bit and take a more offensive route. We're going to utilize the gentleman here. His cards have been up just a little bit more, so it's possible some people have him now. We're using Princess because we want to use her active skill on the Outlast characters and maybe the bodyguarding specialist. We're using Priya as a lead. I'm using Rick for now, and this is mostly me being lazy and not wanting to skip down to someone like Nick. We're just going to try and use this type of team to be effective against this difficult to control defensive team, I'll say. Keep in mind that the defensive team has maxed out potential, so max tier 4 with 30 veteran rings. Most of their rushes and active skills will be maxed unless I don't want them to be, but the same also goes for my attack team. Now this attack team is definitely not a free-to-play attack team at the moment. The gentleman is not a free-to-play character, but Krista kind of fits in there. I kind of like using the gentleman because his active skill is also normalize, so it can be used effectively against Outlast toons, Payback toons, sometimes Traitor if I'm lucky. So it's all about different combinations and kind of being lucky with how you play. Now you'll notice that on this defensive team I don't run a command toon, and that's intentional just because when Tanya ends up rushing, she regains 100% AP. So if you have a command toon, she'll be command rushed the same turn. So you could intentionally try to get her to rush before anyone's dead. And then if she's command rushed, it means the next turn she won't be able to attack or do anything, even if she goes into Outlast, aka if you end up killing her, which could be a very effective method. Now, one other thing I want to mention, with this defensive team, I did swap out Axel's normal weapon, so he's no longer a safe target to attack, where he has a confuse on attack weapon. Instead it's a stun weapon. So it can be dangerous to attack a team like this. It's also expensive, as I mentioned, because weapons cost a lot of armory tokens to upgrade and manipulate. So after a while of playing around just with Axel and defense, I started to kind of find my patterns to figure out the best way to combat a team like this. It's not always effective, but I will say I did get better as the matches went on. I think Axel will always be better on the offensive end. He can be used on the defensive end, but it's very difficult to make him tanky enough. I think to make him tanky enough, you'd need better mods. Like, I don't have good platinum mods that I could put on him that would make him to be an effective defensive leader. I do have, as I mentioned, 40% HP on his weapon. So on this defensive team, I have him set up so that he can take a hit. It's just not giving that 40% or 30% defense or HP boost to everyone else by a true defensive leader. It kind of makes him to be a liability, even if he is able to stop anyone from his red and yellow team from becoming stunned, either by a rush, an active skill, a weapon, a leadership skill on those first 2 turns. And you might think 2 turns, that's really nothing, but in a war match, as we all know, the longer it takes for an enemy to beat you, the more time you have to attack and score points. So in the end, this fairly tanky defensive team, other than not having a true defensive leader, I was able to kind of crack it, and I'm able to beat it in 2 turns. Now, this is a pretty good team in my estimation. Double princess, which, to be fair, a lot of players do have now, especially after they offered 2,500 princess cards in the season store for this season. So this is definitely a viable team for a lot of people to have. It doesn't have to be Rick as a commander. You could have a different commander, especially because we all got 6-star Slater on the 4th of July. So I don't see him as being as viable on the defensive end. Now, in this attack, I want to showcase if Clementine is able to remove the stun resist, because her rush can remove all positive effects, and as you see, it doesn't. So that's a little interesting. I noticed that it doesn't do it with Michonne either. Something else that's interesting, when Alpha attacks, it shows at the bottom that she stole a buff, but she stole nothing. So I have no idea what's actually occurring right there. We can see it again when she makes her rush here. You know, the stun is resisted, there's immunity, but for some reason she's still stealing some buff that doesn't exist. Overall, I think Axel is an extraordinary toon. I just feel like he came a little too late. The only people who are really picking him up are players who think they're going to see a lot of Mercer teams and want to kill them faster. Not a lot of people that I know of who have Mercer themselves find Mercer defensive leads as effective as they used to be. They've just been around for so long that everyone has become kind of accustomed to how they act, and most people have a method of defeating them. Axel completely destroys any RNG that a Mercer defensive lead creates. It's a hard line for me to say this is a must-have toon when what he counters is a type of team that people have been countering for months. Again, I think he's a very powerful toon. His leadership skill is great, even just the 40% attack, and huge bonus to AP when attacking. His rush is very powerful and offers a great attack boost to other characters. His active skill gives 100% AP. He really has a lot going on for him. Even his weapon, it's a better chance for confuse on attack, which is about 35%. So he's a toon that can really do it all to an extent. He's a damage dealer, he can be a support toon, he can be offense, he can be defense, he offers a leadership skill. It's just really hard for me to say he's a must-have character if you're not struggling against the team or toon that he's a counter to. I hope you guys understand what I mean. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching and listening to my video.